guys, welcome to Broke Teachers Travel Podcast. I'm Marnie.
And I'm Jeff.
And today we are going on an adventure. We are going to follow along with Jeff's trip that he took to Turkey. And I think we've got some great information for you guys. Believe it or not, Turkey's actually pretty affordable.
It actually is. It was actually one of the best trips I've ever went on for a number of reasons.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's affordable as in when you get there, things are super affordable. Getting there's probably the biggest expense, wouldn't you think?
Well, absolutely. But just like anything else, one of the things that I did I'd been planning this trip for quite a while, and I'd been planning it with one of my former next door neighbors who happened to be from Turkey. And we talked about going for about 6 or 7 years. And finally, I decided to go. Unfortunately, I decided to go in July, and their weather is just like ours in Florida. It was, a lot of the trip was 88 to 95 degrees. But to answer your question about the affordability, it's the price of the ticket was a little pricey, but it was summer, it was high season, it was tourist season, and looking at prices from say Atlanta to Istanbul at any other time of the year, it is a lot cheaper.
So it is definitely more affordable than the route.
Right.
But I mean, we're working around a teacher's schedule too,
right.
So we have to go when we can.
And so that's why when we go, it's going to be sometime either over the winter break or in spring break, because those tickets are about $500 cheaper during that period of time.
That's a significant difference.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the must-dos for Istanbul?
I mean, everything in Istanbul is amazing. It's just the people, the culture. I knew it was going to be cool, but I had no idea just how cool it was going to be. I'll just kind of go through some of the first couple of days I was there.
Yeah. I mean, you were constantly FaceTiming me and sending me pictures and videos, just saying this is so much more amazing than I thought it could ever be.
Well, one of the first things that we did is my friend Nick, we got to Istanbul and we checked in the hotel, and he said, well, let's go to the Galata Tower. And I'm like, okay, so I know nothing about this. I'd heard of it. I'd seen it, read about it in a book, but so we take the boat over to the European side of Istanbul, which is just crazy to say. And so he says there's a Galata Tower. What he didn't tell me was how much walking and how much uphill and how it was 92 degrees. And so I was like, dang, Nick. He says, well, you're the guy that wanted to come in the summer. And I'm like, yeah. So and when planning that, make sure you know the climate and
maybe choose some cooler months to visit.
Right. And I mean, and I could deal with it because I was from Florida, but a lot of people may find that uncomfortable. But so the Galata Tower, without getting into a history lesson, it's this fortified tower was built, destroyed. The nation of Genoa in Italy, a very powerful place during the Renaissance. They rebuilt the current tower, and one of the coolest things about that place is there is a panoramic view. You could go to the very top and look around and see, all of Istanbul. You could see all the big mosques. You could see just so much of the city there, and so it's one of the best views, if not the best one, that I experienced while in Istanbul.
Yeah, and here's a couple of videos for you to watch on the Galata Tower.
Hey guys, this is Jeff, Broke Teacher Travel, in the city of Istanbul, looking out onto the Sea of Marmara, and back there is the Hagia Sophia. I don't know if we can see it here, the Blue Mosque, big palaces right there. So today we're going to be going to Galata, climbing the Galata Towers, but hanging out here in Istanbul, and it is just beautiful here. It's amazing. Everywhere there's history. And I'm here in Galata in Istanbul, Turkey. Galata Tower was established, this area was established by Justinian, the Emperor Justinian back in the day. In 1204, the Christians, when they sacked Constantinople, tore it down. The people of Genoa built this tower, and then finally in 1453, when the Turks captured Constantinople for the final time, they kicked out the Genoese and established this as a watchtower themselves. This is from Galata Tower, a panoramic view
of Istanbul.
What would you say was your favorite thing about being able to go from Europe to Asia? I mean, that to me that just seems so cool.
Well, it really was. You whenever you stay there, if you stay on the Asian side, everything's a little bit cheaper. The European side, which is much smaller portion of Turkey, is on the European side. But it's you look out and here I'm in Europe and there I'm in Asia, and you could cross the bridge from Europe to Asia, or you could take the ferry across. And I know we're going to be talking in one of the videos about how expensive the ferry is to go from the European side to the Asian side and back and forth. But
Yeah.
I just concluded and found out and confirmed the price to get from one side of the Bosporus to the other side. So that's in Istanbul, is roughly 80 cents.
Something else, when you called me and you were FaceTiming with me and you were showing me the bazaar, that was amazing to me. Just the absolute size of it.
Right.
It was huge.
and the bazaar that we're going to be featuring in this is not the Grand Bazaar. Okay.
Oh, I did not realize that.
No. This is a different bazaar. It is massive in comparison to anything that I've ever seen. But the Grand Bazaar, which we'll talk about in episode 3, maybe, it is so much bigger. But if you just see this one, you don't know there's anything bigger, and this one is big,
It's
amazing.
massive.
One of the cool things, I was thinking about how much my stepdad would have loved this, because every place you go, they're trying to sell you something, but so they're giving you Turkish coffee, Turkish tea, they're giving you Turkish delights, any kind of food. So if you're one of those people that like to go to Sam's for the free sample, man,
You're going to have a field day
oh
there.
my gosh, it is an amazing deal.
I am in the bazaar in Istanbul. If you hear the stuff on the loudspeaker, it is a call to prayer, and as you can see, no one is really calling to prayer.
Yes, that just sounds so awesome to me, to be a part of that culture and really experience the everyday life
Right.
of Istanbul.
Right.
I think that's just so awesome.
To put it in perspective, it's a city of 16 million people. And yet, when you get into the individual little neighborhoods, it's just like being in a little rural community.
Kind of like New York City, where
Yeah.
it's broken down into the little neighborhoods. Yeah, yeah. Now, you actually ran across something that is near and dear to my heart, because my family were beekeepers. You found a honey shop.
Yeah, there's so many things. Like I said, so many surprises. There is a lot of honey that is produced in Turkey. And so they have these entire shops, and I'm talking about like not one or two, but, huge,
Beautiful.
beautiful honey shops. And so you go in there and you buy honey in the jars, you buy, beekeeping equipment, all
Honey
of these things.
products that are made.
And,
Yeah.
and one of the interesting things there is the honey that they serve you at breakfast at any place that I ate. It actually has the honeycomb in it, so that it's
Which
not.
is the best way to eat honey.
And so that was really cool. What I learned over there was that this particular type of honey was the favorite honey of Queen Elizabeth II.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really neat. That's something kind of special to find out,
Right.
that it's that well thought of,
Right.
Among royalty.
Right.
That's pretty impressive.
It was really cool.
Now, something else that you did, you found a way to cool off.
Oh, I did. And I didn't know it. I really didn't know this existed. But so it was 92, 93 degrees in Istanbul. And then I was reading about these cisterns, this big place where they used to keep water back in the day. And my friend said, yeah, we'll go there. And honestly, it was probably one of the most expensive things that I ended up doing. It was
Really?
it was probably like $10 or $11. but it was 92 degrees, and I knew it was going to be cooler under there.
It's worth the $10 or $11 when it's hot like that.
And so basically, we go in this cistern, which was used. It was built back in antiquity to hold water from the time of the Emperor Constantine through the sultans, all of those things. And the one thing was that they always needed this water supply, so no one messed with it. It wasn't destroyed. It wasn't about a religious occupation. It was a need. And yet, when you go in there, it is surreal that when you see the architecture there, that is, it's just amazing. It's very dark in there because it's underground, but they have these cool lights, and the cistern's not full, so there's like catwalks that you could walk over, but there's several movies that have been filmed in this area.
Really?
Yep, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll try to think of them later. That were filmed in there, but at first I thought, man, there's probably 50 or 60 columns, and then I started counting. I'm like, man, there's over 100 columns, and I kept counting, and I think there's over 300 columms.
Wow.
In there,
and they are massive and just absolutely gorgeous.
And it was so cool because literally it was cool. Because it was 20 degrees cooler under there, and if you put your hand on the column, there's actually water. There's it's just a amazing deal. And to me, when I travel, to find things that cool that you weren't expecting, and underground in the middle, that really brings a lot of joy to me.
Hey guys, it's Jeff with Bird Teacher Travel. I'm taking a relief from the 88-degree weather outside in Istanbul, and I am about 55 feet underground at a cistern. And you can see these amazing Roman columns. This was built under the Emperor Justinian, and basically this cistern was used to have the fresh water supply here in Constantinople. But again, this is just amazing if you look at this architecture. It is probably 20 degrees cooler than it is up on the surface up there, so maybe I might just chill out and hang in here for a little while.
To quote Bob Ross, the happy little accidents.
Yep, that's exactly what
you just happen upon them, and I love things like that. That's why I love the independent travel where you can wander and really get to know the area. I love that. Now, something else that you told me about that I found to be pretty cool was that the Sultan at one point had his own private mosque.
Yep, the Sultan had his mosque. It absolutely he had that. We're going to talk a little bit later about one of the Sultan's palaces, but yeah, they have their own mosque. So you had the Hagia Sophia, and you have the Blue Mosque, which we'll talk about in other videos. But the Sultan has his very own mosque to keep kind of everybody out and let him just worship privately, which was really interesting.
Right behind me, this is a mosque. It's not one of the biggest ones, but this was actually the Sultan's private mosque where he did prayers.
Yeah, and the worshiping there is much different than people think. It is not as strict, or I guess people are drifting away from some of the more traditional ways of things.
One of the things, the way my friend Nick explained it to me, is that that Turkey, and if I start looking up, it is a secular country.
Yes,
and so,
yes, it is.
And yet that, people, it's just like here, they're religious, but they're not forced to be religious.
Right.
And many other countries, they do have it's predominantly Muslim as the major religion. Islam is a major religion there, and they do have the call to prayer 5 times a day. But with the exception on the holy days, I didn't see anybody praying. And so
modern times,
right.
I think, has changed a lot of that. And so I think maybe the older people hold more of the traditions, kind of like everywhere.
Right.
It's just the way things have changed.
And
among the people and the generations.
Right. And and when you think about after World War I and the demise of the Ottoman Empire, and Turkey becomes their country, the founder of Turkey, Kemal Ataturk, he was very adamant that they needed some separation of church and state, very similar to us, and that and he was very instrumental in bringing everything and modernizing that country. And we'll probably do an entire video at some point just on him.
Just
because
on him, yeah. Now, something else you were telling me about was the obelisk.
Okay. So
That's a really interesting story.
well, there are there's so many cool things around the world, and I'm not going to get into judgment calls on who ripped off what from which country, okay? Because if we did that, there's
We'll just tell you where they're located.
right. There's debates and going on right now all over the world about returning what artifacts or whatever. But an obelisk is Cleopatra's Needle. They're big pointy items that were taken from Egypt. So in the middle of Istanbul, there is this huge obelisk, and it's just really the top part of it. It's not as part of it was broken off years before, but it was actually used to let chariot racers in what was called the Hippodrome know when the turn was coming up. And it was taken from the Temple of Karnak in Egypt. So later on, when I go to Egypt, I will find where these obelisks used to be.
Yes.
But I didn't realize this, but I'd already seen one of the two obelisks because its sister obelisk is in St. Peter's Square in Rome,
yes.
and it was used as kind of the center point of the Circus Maximus. So it was really interesting that the ancient Romans took these Egyptian artifacts and used them in their horse racing.
Yeah. I mean, who would think to do that?
And those obelisks, and that one's really cool. But there's also one in Paris. There are more Egyptian obelisks outside of Egypt today. Museums in major cities that used to, there used to be major cities in the Roman Empire that have these obelisks, and so you could go to one country and find a huge piece of culture from another country.
Yeah, and I love that, where you see the world, the different parts start to overlap. Right. I love that,
Right.
When I'm in Istanbul, Turkey, and behind me is the obelisk of Theodosius. We talk about obelisks all the time. They're really cool ones. Most of them were taken from Egypt. So this one was actually created about 1700 BC by the Pharaoh Thutmose III. And this was to commemorate his major victory over a group of people called the Mitanni, who we'll talk about a little later on. This was eventually brought by Theodosius to, it was called Constantinople back then, and it was one of the points in his hippodrome. So hippodrome is a big horse racing track. This obelisk was taken from the Temple at Karnak and Egypt, and so next year, or later this year when I go to Egypt, I will show you where it was taken from. There was another obelisk about this size taken from Karnak, and it is in Rome, and it was one of the points in the Circus Maximus. But if you go to Rome today and you go to St. Peter's, you see a big obelisk out. It was the obelisk that was taken from Karnak at the same time that this one was taken by Emperor Theodosius.
And another one that you told me about, another monument that you saw, you mentioned something about a serpent monument.
Oh yeah, this was so cool because I didn't know anything about this and what it was. And I think I know a lot of history, but when you go places, you realize, like Socrates says, the one thing I know is that I know nothing. And so there was a monument there, and it was kind of coiled up, and it was actually missing the head. And I was like, well, what's going on here? And I learned that this was a monument that was in the shape of a serpent, which was brought from the Temple of Delphi in Greece, the patron of Apollo. And I've been there a couple of times, and next time I go, I'll know, hey, where did it actually come from here? Because I didn't know that before. But it was a commemorative monument that was made by the Greeks after the final defeat of the Persians at the Battle of Plataea. So you guys, if you've seen the movie 300, that was the battle at Thermopylae. Before that, the Battle of Plataea was where they finally won and kicked all the Persians out. But so it was just a monument there, which was so cool. I didn't know anything about it, but that connection really made me smile.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is Jeff with Broke Teachers Travel. Behind me is the monument called the Serpent Monument or Memorial, and basically this was taken from the Temple of Delphi in Delphi, Greece, or Delphi, Greece. This originally had a serpent's head on it, the serpent's head is actually located in the Archaeological Museum here in Istanbul. But this was taken from the Temple of Delphi in Greece, but originally it was to commemorate the victory of the Greeks over the Persians at the Battle of Plataea. So sometimes it's called the Plataea Memorial or Monument. But this was brought in to Constantinople / Istanbul in the year 324 when Constantine made this his empire. So he brought that over from Delphi, Greece at that point.
Okay, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode, and we're going to have more of these on Turkey. Don't forget about that. We're going to do more episodes on Turkey and follow Jeff's journey through the country. It's going to be very, very interesting and fun. But that's going to do it for today. Thanks for following along. Remember, hit that like and subscribe button and follow us on socials. And thanks for being a part of our conversation and always being there and subscribing to our channel. And remember, break the monotony.
Not the bank.
Bye, guys.
If you have any questions,
Leave them in the comments.
take care.